All right, I'm Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic, and welcome to Common Solution Workshop. So tonight we're talking about resentment inventory. So I'm going to start off with a story like I always love to. So this is a story of a snake, and the snake is crawling over a sharp saw blade, and it gets cut. And so the snake gets really mad and it wraps himself around, this saw blade. And it squeezes and squeezes, in anger, I'm going to squeeze the life out of the saw, the snake says. With every angry squeeze, it feels more pain and continue because it wasn't going to let that saw, what it did to it, go. And the pain it caused it. The snake refusing, though, to let go dies. Not knowing the whole time, he needed to let go of the pain and focus on the future and where he was going. Instead, the snake unfortunately lost its life and didn't even see its anger, didn't even see it coming. We're the same. We must let go of our anger, forgive those who hurt us, and don't give people or things power over us, because it'll ultimately kill us. And all you have to do is really look around at how many people wear anger on their sleeve. You see it every day on the road, in the cars, and they have no clue how powerful it is. And they don't, and how many lives it engulfs. So, anger it's a very paralyzing emotion. And it's paralyzing of the brain, is what, and that it contaminates all aspects of our life. And nothing eats a person away from the inside out like anger. And it's capable of shifting our thinking. One moment we're calm, and a second later, we're in rage, the darkness of rage. And for the rest of the day, it controls us and dominates us. Our instincts tell us to go prove we're right, to go seek revenge and get the last word in. And the thing about it is, we believe we're defining the other person through resentment. But the truth is, resentment's defining us. And the end result is we hold tight onto, anger for years, many years, some of us. Resentments not only drive our thinking, but they drive people right out of our lives. And we get, sent, to anger management. That doesn't change us. It just tells us some coping tools. Some of it's all right, but we try to put our feelings to rest, but can we? We try to control our thinking, but it's still there. It's like an itch we can't scratch. And we must discover what drives our thinking. And that's the truth. We must let go, regardless of whose fault it is. Step 10 gives us hope in the very first line on page 84. And we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. Meaning we can be free of anger. And being free of anger is not something that we get from standing around staring at it. Being free of anger is one of the main elements of being recovered. 429 is about it's not about letting anger defeat you anymore or define you. Last week I asked an important question, and it was from Einstein. Do you want to live in a friendly world or a hostile? Do you want to live in a friendly or hostile universe? Do I want to live in a universe that's filled with hostility and anger and people, wanting to hate each other? Or do I want peace and give away love? The solution to overcoming anger is to live in that peaceful universe. And it's looking to do, for us to get there, we need to look deeply into our personal history. call it, the Oxford group called it soul surgery. We call it personal inventory. And until we start that house cleaning process, we cannot live a normal life because we're driven by misdirected instincts that we're unaware of. Remember I said before, what you're aware of, you can, what you're aware of, you can control. You can work on, you can let it go, you can make amends, all sorts of cool stuff, but you're not aware of will control you. If I'm not aware of that I'm driven by misdirected instincts, it's going to control me. The fourth step is about many things. You know, we know it's about becoming honest with ourselves. It's about facing truths that we prefer to keep hidden. It's about becoming aware of what drives our thinking. But the one thing it is not about is beating ourselves up. This is not a painful thing. Rather, it's about honestly facing some unfathoming truths about ourselves so we can be free. So it's a liberating process. Yet, I mentioned last week, you hear a lot of, old timers will say to the newcomers, just wait till you get to that fourth step. And the newcomer's like, huh, what, step 4? And it scares the crap out of people. Step 4 scares people because it's a journey to the unknown. Is that true? Are we really afraid of the unknown, or are we afraid of the known? Are we protecting the known? It's not about the unknown. We're afraid of the known that we know about, stuff only we know about. The truth is, really, we do not know why we protect it. I mean, how long have you fought to protect that stuff? Your resentments. It's their fault. How selfish am I? I'm not wrong. I didn't do anything. Look at what they did to me. It is always another's fault, and we will always be at the mercy of another person. Let's say I go, it's kind of like this, and this is an insane analogy, but let's say I go to a doctor and I got a bunch of resentment, and I go to the doctor and I tell him my symptoms, right? My anger. So the doctor says, I'm going to write you, some prescriptions for your symptoms. So you go to the pharmacist to pick them up, and you say, the pharmacist, I'm here to get my prescriptions. And he says, no, these aren't for you. This one is for your mother-in-law. This one's for your boss. This one's for your neighbor. This one's for your daughter. This one over here is for your father. This one's for that complete stranger you get mad at later today. That sounds insane, but it's true. We expect someone else to change or something outside of us to get better in order for us, for life to work. That's what we believe. You see the insanity in that? We take a hard look, we need to take a hard look at this stuff and stop blaming others. I'm going to be honest. I said before, it's my personal conviction, my personal belief that no real alcoholic or addict can ever achieve a life of useful purpose, attain any real sanity, overcome the obsession, have permanent sobriety until they take the action of steps 4 through 9. The way it is broken down in the big book. Awareness of what drives you is the key ingredient to that. Think of like that food you like, that the old recipe you cook. And if you leave out that one key ingredient, the whole recipe changes. Or you add that key ingredient, oh man, it tastes good. Instincts is that key ingredient that we're trying to become aware of. It makes so much sense in 4 and 5. We see everything. And plus, it's not am I learning these instincts so I can get past them? Am I learning these instincts so I can show someone else to get past them? Something to think about. Because I heard a guy say the other day, we become well so we can help others. The truth is here's the ugly truth of it. We think suffering is always holding on us and we're holding on to suffering. A few weeks back, I mentioned self and self-centered is the root of our troubles. And that means if self and self-centered is the root of my troubles, I am the root of the problem. If I am the root of the problem, I cannot fix the problem. Let me say it again. If I am the root of the problem, I cannot fix the problem. You can let, suffering go, and you'll see that no one else is responsible for your suffering except for you. And that's the beginning of a new understanding. That's what happens in step 4 and 5, especially 5. The new understanding is not achieved by studying it and reading it, going to groups, even like this, going to meetings, talking about it, reading the great step-driven book, or going to rehab, or the therapist or whatever. New understanding comes from opening up your heart, taking action that sets us free. So you must redo your hardwired program that we have. So I heard a guy say years ago, the steps aren't about learning anything, they're about unlearning everything. And you need a method to untwist that mystery, what drives us, and the tool for that step 4. So tonight, like I said, we're talking about resentment. Meaning, we're talking about our thinking. So let's go to page 30. And you might think, why is he going to page 30? We already covered this in step 1. Well, it's a paragraph that says most of us are unwilling to admit. I'm going to change drinking to thinking. And we're going to read this paragraph, right? It says, most of us have been unwilling to admit we were real alcoholics. No person likes to think he is bodily and mentally different from his fellows. Therefore, it's not surprising that our thinking careers have been characterized by countless attempts to prove we could think like other people, like pride. The idea that somehow, someday, we'll control and enjoy his thinking is a great obsession of every abnormal thinker. The persistence of this illusion is astonishing and may pursue it to the gates of insanity and death. What does that tell me when you put thinking in there? Thinking is the problem, right? Thinking is the problem. The mind that is the problem will never solve the problem. Self-will cannot overcome self-will. A sick mind cannot heal a sick mind. A resentful mind cannot overcome resentment. And the sad part, people in recovery are doing that, trying to control their thinking with a hopeless mind, not having a clue that transformation must happen, change must happen. Remember the movie Terminator, with Arnold, I'll be back, right? Remember he's destroying everything in his path. He destroys the police station, and then no one can stop him. He's killing everyone, shooting up buildings. It's a killing machine. They can't be reasoned with. Remember how they beat it? They took a little chip out of its head and just kind of went and froze. Once the thinking was removed, the destruction ended. It was driven to do what it's programmed to do. It was driven to do what its mind told it to do. We're no different than that, really, until our certain elements of our thinking, of our program is removed, let's just say. We will keep resenting, destroying, harming people, holding guilt, having fear. The problems are in our thinking. And you might say, well, what does that do with some people, newcomers might say, what does it do with alcoholism? Because we drink over this shit. Now, my neighbor could drink over this stuff, but he can get away with it because he's not alcoholic. He'll have 2 beers and he'll say, I'm going to have 2 beers. If I get a resentment in the past, when I had a resentment, or it was just another excuse to go have a drink, but that awoke that allergy. Boom, boom, boom. But the point about our thinking is we have an insane mind, and the insane mind will always try to solve life's problems where? Out here. We'll always seek solutions out here. And unfortunately, and it's sad to say, I'd say 89% of AA members today believe the solution is outside of themselves. They think change is about, getting a new job, a new relationship, breaking up with someone, or even better, meetings. I love meetings, don't get me wrong. I go to meetings all the time. But we look for the solution in meetings and other people. Then I'm going to try to find recovery in a testimony of another person. We hurry to the next meeting, we check in, we rouse slogans, we huddle together, we discuss it, we think about the next camp out, whatever it's going to be, trying to shield ourselves from temptation one day at a time, all while being driven into resentment, fear, and guilt from the past, not knowing we must be restored to sanity, not knowing we must seek within ourselves to have freedom. They say, don't leave until the miracle happens. We got to seek that miracle. Miracle doesn't come to us. We come to it. Transformation has to happen. And so until you become aware of what drives your thoughts and emotions and behaviors, you will continue to struggle with your thoughts, emotions, and behavior. Because your thoughts, emotions, and behavior will, direct your life. So there's an old proverb: I become what I think. I become what I think. Let's go to page 63. So right after the third step prayer, I have one paragraph down about we did step 3. Some of us had, maybe a powerful effect, but right underneath that, we're making a decision to drive the car. And now we got in the car. And what's the next we do is we put the pedal to the metal, right? Next. What does next mean? It means now, immediately. Like you're in a doctor's office, they say next. They're looking at you. So immediately. Next, we launch on a course of vigorous action. Think about what launch means. He uses the term rocket in here. Launch, it's propel forward, but not just, not like a tricycle. We're talking fast. We launched on a course of vigorous action. You can think about vigorous action, if you spilled your dope on the ground or your alcohol got misplaced, you didn't go, oh, it's somewhere around here. No, you tore apart the damn house vigorously. The vigorous action they're talking about, forceful, energetic action. The first step was a personal house cleaning. Look what he says, which many of us have never attempted. Maybe in our head, thinking it out. House cleaning is steps 4 through 9. Here's an interesting, I was thinking about this earlier, is I was watching old videos in the show. Remember the show Hoarders? I don't know if it's still on or not. Maybe it is, but the show Hoarders, right? And that's the, any of us that did stuff in the past, and we hung out in houses that look like those houses sometimes, right? And the houses are so messy and cluttered that they do not even know what's in the houses. They don't even know what's in there. And they have to bring a crew in to help them go through their junk, that go through what they don't need and throw it away. But they let them keep the stuff that works, that's not broken, that they can use. That's what we're kind of doing here too. We're going through our junk, and it's way more junk than that's in those houses. It's up here. And we're gonna keep the stuff that can work for us, and we're gonna get rid of the junk we don't need. If we could do that on our own, we wouldn't need this, but we need the steps. So here's a step 3 warning. And I read this a couple weeks ago. I'm going to read it again. Though our decision, step 3, right? Plan, it's a planned thought prior to taking action, the decision. Though our decision, and step 3, was a vital and crucial step, it could have little or permanent effect unless at once. So it's 2 interesting things there. It says it could have little permanent effect. Some interesting wording there. Unless at once, so there's a condition. Followed by a strenuous effort. Strenuous effort is step 4. To face, step 5, and to be rid of the things in ourselves that are blocking us. To be rid of is step 6. The things in ourselves are blocking us. Blocking us from what? Blocking us from God, or whatever you want to call that, right? Whatever you want to call that. So look at this next line. And this is one that caught me when I was a newcomer, because I had no clue what they were talking about here. But when it was explained to me properly, I went, oh, okay. Our liquor is but a symptom. Wait a minute, how could a liquor be a symptom? I came to Alcoholics Anonymous because liquor is the problem, right? They're telling me something different here. It's just a symptom of a larger problem. We had to get down the causes and conditions. So first of all, what's a symptom? It is an indicator to a disease or like disorder. And the cause, a cause is the origin of something, what creates something. And the conditions that state something in, maybe it's regard to its appearance or quality or the way it works, it's working or how it goes, right? Like a car, what's the condition of your car right now, right? Now, if I'm coughing and I'm sneezing and I have a headache, that's the symptoms of a cold. You can't see the cold, you can only see the symptoms. So you can't get, you can't get rid of the symptom without getting rid of the cause. Now, here's the interesting thing is Eastern medicine, they take a lot of herbs and stuff like that. And so they get less illnesses and less colds and stuff. Western medicine, what they do is, I got a cold a couple weeks ago. I went down and bought something to take on the symptom. Not to get rid of the cause, but I had a bunch of vitamins and stuff I took. When you eliminate the cause, the symptom goes away. Remember, alcohol is a symptom here. So think of it from a step one standpoint, the cause, powerlessness, lack of power, allergy, obsession. And the condition I'm in is that unmanageability, all the consequences, the insanity of the first drink, all that stuff that goes with it. Restless, irritable, discontent. I'm going to go deeper though. I'm going to put up a slide. So the real problem, we're way past step one. We're looking at the real stuff here. We're looking at step 4. Misdirected instincts is the cause. But the pride, the self-esteem, all that stuff drives me. And the condition I'm left in is I harbor resentment. I have a life of guilt. A full fight from reality, full fear, self-pity, selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened. You can say inconsiderate, you could throw that in there. You could restless, irritable, discontent. Restless, irritable, discontent. If you want to know what that means, it's high anxiety, easily pissed off and not satisfied. It's all wrapped together. That's huge right there. Again, if I remove the cause, the symptom goes away, and so do the conditions start to heal, right? So I need to go work on the conditions, which is the cause of this misdirected instincts. The symptom goes away, and I become recovered. Let's go to 164. And look what it says here. Now we get down to some interesting words. Resentment is the number one offender. It destroys more alcoholics than anyone else. I thought alcohol destroyed more alcoholics than anything else. That's what the impression I always got. This is Alcoholics Anonymous. Resentment is the number one offender. So what is resentment? It's a reoccurring presence of displeasure towards something or somebody. It comes from a French word called ressentiment, which is a combination of the word re and sentiment, right? It means to feel again, feel anger, hurt. I feel hurt again, feel, re-feel over and over and over again. So ressentiment means that is exactly what we do with anger. We hold on to anger. Anger is the worst thing we could have, but we're going to hold on to it. Refill it over and over again. Before we move on, we're going to pause right here and we're going to go to page 66 and read a little bit more about resentment. Okay. Where it says, it is plain that a life which includes deep resentment leads to only fertility and having. Now, fertility is a sense that no matter how much you work at it, nothing good will happen. What's the point, right? To a slight extent do we permit these, do we squander the hours that might have been worthwhile? How many hours have you wasted away in resentment? Trying to figure something out happened and you waste a whole day on it, or maybe years trying to figure out why. But with the alcoholic, they're going to tell us what our hope is. Whose hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience. I thought my hope was to quit drinking and not drink. I thought my hope was to just don't drink one day at a time. No, they're telling me my hope is the maintenance and growth of a spiritual experience. That's a little bit deeper. This business of resentment is infinitely grave. We found it is fatal. Woman harboring such feelings. Now, first of all, what does a harbor do? It stores, right? What does it mean to harbor feelings? It means to hold on to negative emotions and feelings in your mind rather than dispelling them, right? So when harboring such feelings, we shut ourselves off from the sunlight spirit. Where's God? Deep down within us, page 55 tells us. Deep down within us. Deep down within us. That is what they tell us in this book. Thank God, the way it's broken down like that. Deep down within us. And the thing about it is, it's saying we shut ourselves off from the sunlight of the spirit. So we shut ourselves off from the God within us. The insanity of alcohol return. What's the insanity of alcohol? The obsession. And we drink again. Has anyone ever gone through that before? I'm sure some of us have, right? The insanity of alcohol returns when we drink again. With us, a drink is a die. They're not talking about death buried in the ground. They're talking about that cycle drinking in Docker's opinion. You know, where it says, you know, the men and women drink essentially, you know, but we succumb to desire, final craving develops, we make a firm resolution, we keep going and going and going, and that's all we do. With us, the drink is a die. Well, I don't want to die, I want to live. If we were to live, we got to be free of anger. We talked about that a minute ago, they mentioned in step 10. The grouch and the brainstorm are not for us. Now, we know what a grouch is. And, you know, it's that person who's always bickering, complaining, you know, unpleasant. You know, maybe they're just critical and irritable, you know, rude, you know, always focusing on people's faults, right? That's the grouch. Nothing good about their thinking. Now, brainstorming is not a bad thing. It means, you know, we're investigating something. We're trying to gather facts and put it together, you know, and, you know, intensely thinking about it. They're saying the grouch, being that grouch and brainstorming is not recommended. They may be Dewey's luxury for normal men. What's the normal man? No allergy, no obsession. So let's say that, you know, Jimmy and I go down to the nearest bar and I'm not an alcoholic and we have a drink to unwind. And, you know, as soon as he has his first drink, he wants more and more and more. I stop with the second drink because that's what I said. That's you know, that's a normal man right there. You know, normal people can get away with being a jerk. They can get away with being self-centered. They get away with being miserable. A normal person can. It's not happy. They're not happy. It's not good, but they're not going to drink over it and develop pronounced craving. We can only be a jerk for so long. We can only stay miserable for so long until we see ease and comfort that comes at once. It says they may be Dewey selects for normal men, for alcoholics, these are poison. I don't care who you are. I don't care. We all have deep-seated anger that we've held on to in the past sometime. Resentment does nothing to change the person we resent. Like I said earlier, it does not define the other person, it defines you. Instead of freeing us from the wrongs of others, it allows the other person to dominate and occupy our thinking. So I don't think there's not much nutritional value in having resentment, right? They may seem huge and powerful when they're in our head, but when we get down on paper, it's like, oh, they look kind of silly, right? But we love to justify resentments. We love justified resentments. Here's the truth. No matter what anyone says to you, no matter what whatever kind of anger comes directed towards you, no matter how much hate you encounter in your life, there is no justified resentments. Meaning, if you hold on to resentment about anything or about anyone, the person that that's the person you lent money to that never paid you back. That's the person during your life that hurt you, the person that left you for someone else. All those resentments have one thing in common. They'll always end up harming you, creating more harm and more despair than anyone. No one ever dies from a snake bite. It's the venom that kills them slowly and eats away at them slowly, right? Just like resentment. go back to 64. Does that make sense? What I'm saying is that we want to justify these resentments. That guy did this to me. There is no justified resentments because it hurts us. It's hurting us. They make no sense. Back to 64. So it said, resentments and one offender destroys more alcoholics than anyone else. From it stems all forms of spiritual disease. For we've not only been mentally and physically ill, we've been spiritually sick. People blame spiritual disease on damnation, sin, or lack of faith. We're getting right to the point. We're saying resentment, right? Holding on to an anger that you should have let go right away. But look what it says here. When the spiritual malady, so spiritual malady means spiritual sickness. When the spiritual sickness is overcome, we start out mentally and physically. So they just said something very important there. When I overcome being spiritually sick, the obsession gets removed. Makes it sound pretty easy. It is. It is. It's not that difficult if you do the work. It's more difficult if you do the work or do it halfway. I'm going to put up, I got 7 questions on the spiritual malady I'm going to put up, and this will help you understand it and we're going to get an inventory. But check this out. So my 7 questions of the spiritual malady is, what is a spiritual malady? What are the manifestations of the spiritual malady? What causes the manifestations of the spiritual malady? What's the end result? If left untreated, can the spiritual malady drive you back to drink? What's the remedy for the spiritual malady? And what's the results of that remedy? So let's look at the first one. What is a spiritual malady? Right? So we talked about God being within. We said a whole bunch about that. And if I can connect to that God within without a bunch of resentments I'm shoving in me, it's interesting. When the spiritual malady is overcome, we show out mentally and physically. You know, the spiritual malady is the inability to connect to the spirit within me. That's the spiritual malady. You know, page 55 perfectly stated, the great reality is within us. We found the great reality deep down, and the last ounce is only there where it may be found, they said. I call it inner guidance center. It is where we receive strength, inspiration, guidance, direction, according to this book and according to my experience. But if I'm shoving negative emotions inside myself, it creates the inability to connect to that spirit and receive, you know, the consciousness, the guidance, clarity, make sane, rational decisions. You might have a belief in God. You might go to church on Sunday. You might even have a strong religious knowledge, devotion, understanding. If you cannot connect to that spirit within you, there's a spiritual malady going on. Some call it untreated alcoholism. The second one is, what are the manifestations? What are the signs of the spiritual malady? The 5 common signs of the spiritual malady are resentments, harms to others, guilt, fear, and sex misconduct, right? It is those manifestations that show that self is running my life. It is these manifestations that we hold on to, and it's the focal point of step 4. Is these ones that block us off from God, creating that malady. These ones block us off from God. Again, resentment, harms to others, guilt, fear, and sex misconduct. What causes those manifestations of the spiritual malady? Self-will run right, misdirected instincts, you know, the pride, the self-esteem, and all that. If we continue to be driven by misdirected instincts, we'll always be at the mercy of those manifestations. And we follow instincts rather than our, you know, direction from our intuition within us. So if misdirected instincts drive and create the common manifestations, what does that mean? Does that mean misdirected instincts create the spiritual malady? Yeah, you can say it, you know. So what's the end result of the spiritual malady? Now, I mentioned the 7 pieces of self, the 7 misdirected instincts: personal relations, self-esteem, pride, emotional security, material security, sex, and ambitions, right? 7 pieces of instincts make up something called ego. The ego, the I identify what I think. Ego makes you believe I am what I want, I am what I have, I am what I do. I am what others think of me. But most important, the ego tells me I'm separated from everyone else and I'm separated from God. Meaning ego thrives on separation. So we believe this separation. We believe we're separated from God. But here's the truth. Here's the truth. The end result is not we're separated from God. The end result is an illusion we're separated from God. False perception of reality, a lie. So an illusion, it's an illusion. How could it be an illusion? What's this guy talking about? Because how can we be separated from what's already within us? We cannot be separated. We can only be blocked. If I'm only blocked, it's easy to find. If I'm separated from it, where am I going to find? Then we mean it's out here somewhere. No, it's within us. You know, every single one of us has spirit within us that guides and directs our thinking. We were never separated, just blocked. And when we believe we're separated, what do we say? Why would God allow me to go through pain? Why would God take away my loved ones or my financial, hardship? Why would he do that? As we say, God never answered my prayers. So this illusion of separation creates doubt. And one thing I love that Carl Jung said about this word separation, in Modern Man's Search of Soul, Carl Jung said that a man fills his separation from God with alcohol. Very interesting. So if left untreated, can the spirituality drive you back to drink? If you continue to experience the 5 manifestations, eventually you will seek out the ease and comfort that comes at once by taking a few drinks. You will want the ease and comfort. But if I don't want to go that route, what is the remedy of the spiritual malady? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then 10, which is 4 through 9, and 11, all of those. Step 4 is the beginning of the treatment for the spiritual malady. So what's the result of that remedy? When the spiritual malady is overcome, we shut out mentally and physically. Meaning because of steps 4 through 9 and taking on the resentment, the obsession is removed. Now look at this real quick. This is an interesting way to put it, right? So this layer right here represents the spiritual malady, right? The frustrations and anger and all this stuff I'm talking about here. This is the obsession. So it's the anger is gonna, make the obsession, I got something that can help you. And then that triggers the allergy. So spiritual malady is the first layer, obsession is the second layer, allergy is the third layer. Pretty interesting, look at it like that. That's what it does. So what happens if I take away the spiritual malady? It weakens obsession eventually goes away. So the thing about it is that's the thing. It's a twofold disease, allergy, obsession, with a symptom of spiritual malady is the way I look at it. Let's go back to 64. It says, in dealing with resentments, we set it on paper. So that's a condition. When we have a resentment, we put it on paper. That's the first condition, really, that type of condition we see. We listed people, institutions, and principles with whom we're angry. Let's look at those. People, entire body of human beings who constitute a community, tribe, nation, sex, sexuality, religion, culture, whatever it is. It's not just the people around you, it's types of people, it's races, whatever you resent or resented in the past. It's a lot of stuff that can go down there if you're, thorough. Institutions, people, I've had guys I sponsor and I have people down in resentment. What about institutions? That could be a society, it could be an organization, that could be an establishment, that can be a foundation, it could be a business. It could be a long custom or a practice. And then we have another one for people to forget about, principles. That could be beliefs, morals, rules, laws, or ethical standards, right or wrong conduct. How about laws? There's got to be some laws we resented, right? Put it all down there. But look what it says. We ask ourselves why we were angry. So the anger is the presence of displeasure towards somebody. And we hold on to that. It causes resentment. If you ask a person what made them angry, they don't know. Do you know what the most unique feature of anger is? And I said this already. It insists other people are to blame. With guilt, we know who's to blame. Us. But that's the lying part. It convinces us that we are the innocent victims of others, of the wrongdoings of others, and tells us to seek revenge and harm these people. The only person, that gets harmed is us. So let's look at this book says next. Now we're getting into the instincts. In most cases, we found that our self-esteem, our pocketbooks, our ambitions, our personal relations, including sex, were hurt or threatened. We were sore. We were burned up, right? Our grudge list, we set aside each name its injurious. So a grudge means to harbor feelings against another person for something they did. A grudge. Another word for resentment. It's persistent feeling of, And I'm going to put up a primer sheet that I use, and this is just good for sponsees, new guys who say they don't have resentment. It's a very nice way of doing it. And what I ask them to do, this is not inventory, it's a primer sheet. Remember, it's not primer. Primer's for paint, primer's for education, right? So what I tell them to do is I just say, hey, just give me a list of all the people you're mad at, all the people you don't want to be around it. After they tell me they have no resentments, and all of a sudden this page there's 60 of them written down, and we move that over to the inventory sheets, right? Primer sheets these help a lot. I don't like the ones you see online that have a list of resentments, like 200 of them, and all of a sudden my guy tells me he got no resentments, and he sees a list of resentments. Oh, I got that one. All of a sudden they got we love picking stuff like that outside ourselves. This one's better because you just write down what you have. You start thinking about it. Oh yeah, I don't like that guy up the street. I don't like the guy at my work. I don't like, boom, boom. Right? It's a good little help right there. So back to the book. Here's more instincts. Was it our self-esteem? High or low? Our security, our ambitions, our personal or sex relations, which have been interfered with. Interfered with means to obstruct, when we get a resentment, our instincts are hurt or threatened, right? So I get a resentment, my instincts are hurt or threatened. So what happens when I harm someone? I'm going to satisfy those instincts. We're usually as definite as this example. Now, I'm going to show you what this is, a 4-step packet that they use in my sponsorship line for probably 40 years now, well, since the 80s. And we kind of tweaked it over the years. We call it Works Inventory, like Works Publishing. I'll show you real quick what's in there. Now, I want to say something. This is not to replace the way you do it. I'm not saying this is the right way. This is just my experience with inventory. I'm hoping that if you do it a different way, that it's not to change the way you do it, but it might give you a deeper perspective on it. Some of you may have done it this way before. So I'm going to show you what's in here real quick. So we have the instincts page, which we showed you last week. And we have the essential words of inventory, everything. There's a definition of moral inventory, definition of resentment, harms, and fears, definition of selfishness, self-seeking, and then the cause, and all the words you see. And then we have the resentment sheet. And we'll show you in a minute how we do this, but it's just almost the same thing as what's in the book. It's just that it's for you to see it in front of you. Joe and Charlie were the first ones that made them like these, and it's pretty cool. But this is how resentment, fear, harms. Now, not everyone does harm inventory, some do. I'll explain that when we get there. That'll be next week. And then sex conduct, and then we have sex ideal is in there as well. Now, when I give this to someone, there's, because they're not going to make copies of it, I give them about 10 resentment sheets, about 5 fear sheets, and they can make more copies. If anyone wants a copy of this, I'll definitely get it to you though. But that's what that one looks like. And so the one thing I want to show you real quick is, let me get this view thing different. So, oh, wrong one. So let's look at the definite example that's in the book. You got Mr. Brown, such as my wife, but what I want to show you guys is that all the instincts are on here. Sex relations, self-esteem is over in here. Security, emotional security, self-esteem again, personal relations right here. Pride, people leave pride off of it, and it's right there. Now, it's also there's other words in here. Go back where we just read. In most cases, we found it was our self-esteem, our pocketbooks. That's the material, right? Ambitions, that's the ambitions. The ambitions is, we'll get to that, like what that did. And then they also mentioned, was it our self-esteem or ambitions or our personal relations or sex relations? There's that. So all that's in there. I just wanted to show you guys that. So now we're going to look at, oops, what happened there? Now we're going to look at this next to this. So we're looking at these two side by side. And this is, like I said, this is the way to inventory. And it's what I like about these sheets is it's right there in front of you. I've done it on binder paper and stuff, but this is the way I did it first. So I'm kind of like, I feel more connected to this way, but I've done it on binder paper. But for some reason, even 22 years later and doing step 10 the same way I do this type of inventory, I need to see these instincts, because sometimes I go, oh, I may not see it all the way. So you just, let's the thing about it is, I want to talk about this definite example really quick. It's amazing how many people can screw up inventory, and more bewildering, they screw it up when we have a definite example. So what's a definition of definite is very interesting. Something guaranteed not to change. This inventory is not changing, right? And it's synonymous with words like certain, positive, specific, guaranteed, undeniable, unquestionable, precise, absolute, and right. And I'll go back and mention this in step 10, because he never tells us what type of inventory we do in step 10. This is personal inventory. He's like telling us something like, this is how it's done. What's the title of this chapter? How it works. If I change how something works, it turns into how it doesn't work. I get something different. It's like changing the cookie recipe. At least now the cookie recipe, Kickin's cookie recipe, and at least now it turns out like crap. I don't get this. I don't get the results. Remember I mentioned before, we do an investigation in steps 1 and 2. We make a decision. I take action. I want to get results. The results is what's much more important as the action. I want the outcome promised in this book. He also uses the word example. It's something used as a model. So they're saying this example, this is the model we must follow. This is the definite example. So let's look at it. Let's do Mr. Brown like I would do on the sheet. So let's say his attention to my wife, and I'll throw a little scenario in there. Let's say his attention to my wife is totally imaginary. He's just waving in the direction. Hey, look, he's talking to my wife across the room. So I write down here on this sheet here, Mr. Brown. I would write down what it is he did, right? And did it affect my personal relations with Mr. Brown? Yes, it did. Now, what I write is, what's my self-esteem here? Is it high, where I think I'm better than Mr. Brown? Or is it low, where I think, oh my God, he's doing it again? For me, it's high. I want to kick this dude's ass, right? So pride, did it affect my pride? Everyone else in the room sees it. Did it affect my emotional security? Yeah, I'm riled up. Every resentment affects that. Material, there's no money being thrown around here. There's no sex relations. I'm not having sex with Mr. Brown. Is that our ambitions? Does it affect my future Mr. Brown? He works in my office. Of course, I'm not going to talk to this guy. And me and him were supposed to do a project together. I ain't doing that project no more. So it affects the social and security. The end result, selfish and frightened. We'll get into that part, the 67 in a minute. But my point is, it's not very hard there. You know, we just write out the resentment, write down who was I resentful at and the cause. You know, if the inventory stopped right there after column 1 and column 2, then it would only be a confession. That's all it would be, just a confession. We must go further. We must go deeper than before. So this affects my section. The instincts is what tells my story. This tells my story, right? We see why we did the things we do. We understand why we did the things we do, and it changes the way we look at our life. All those boxes and crosses are defects, are shortcomings, exactness are wrong. All these are. So exactness or wrongs, precise characteristics which something is recognized as what exactly my wrong is. It's characteristics. You know, you've told people your wrongs before, but have you ever told anyone the exact nature of your wrongs? Because we don't know how to do that. Now we do, right in front of us. Let's go to page 67. It says, referring to our list again, referring to our list. So referring to our list again, putting out of the minds the wrongs that others have done. Resolutely means showing firm determination. We looked, we searched for our own mistakes. Mistakes is a thought or action that is misguided and wrong, right? When where had we been selfish? It's a big, you know, cover up, you know, where, the word where, and it says, had we been selfish? Now you put the word where in there. Now you got a solution. It's not just had you been selfish? If I asked anyone in here, had you been selfish on the situation? I think so, but if I ask you where you have been selfish, you got to think about it, right? About location. Where we've been selfish, that's tending mostly of my own needs with lower thought of others. Where we've been dishonest, lying, stealing, cheating, deceiving. Where we have been self-seeking, that's the act of, you know, taking my selfishness and putting it in action. I might, you know, resent Robert in here, and he doesn't know it, but then I go kick in his door and harm him somehow. Now it's self-seeking. I took action, right? And he's going to kick my butt from kicking his door down. You know, where we've been frightened, it's a state of fear. So we have thoughts and actions on here. So the situation had not been entirely our fault. We try to disregard the other person's involvement entirely. That's the person in column 1, right? How can I do that? Here's the important question. Where were you to blame? Where are we to blame? The inventory was ours, not the other man's. When we saw our faults, we listed them. We placed them before us in black and white. We admitted our wrongs honestly and were willing to set matters straight. That means step 9. So check this out. It tells us to put out of our minds what the person did. You know, that person stole $500 from me, right? And then it tells me disregard the other person's involvement entirely. So drop these two, right? By disregarding the other person and putting in mind what they did, the only thing I have to look at is this over here. You see? You know, by disregarding that, what they did, it leaves me with the part of the inventory. It's only about me. I shift to what they did in this, but not. I'm going to find my mistake in here. So the infects my column 3. I don't just see what instincts were affected. I get to, you know, see what drove me to selfishness. Those instincts out of balance, misdirect, tell my story. I see how pride drove my selfishness. I see how high self-esteem made it all about me. How low self-esteem made me frightened. You know, we're trying to live life on self, we're going to show ourselves. Can that lead me to dishonest acts? Absolutely. Can that lead me to being self-seeking? Absolutely. Can that lead me to living a life full of fear? Absolutely. So the 4th column is the end result or the condition I'm left in living life on instincts. Also, it gets us away from being a victim. I hate to say this, but there's no recovery in being a victim, none. We must send blame out of our lives. Blame must go. We must find our mistake and take responsibility for it. And this is where we do it. And no matter what circumstances you've been through, blame must go. Maybe it's not completely your fault. Maybe there's horrible people out there. And that what they did is way worse than you did to them. We have to find where our part, where we're to blame. This is our opportunity to get rid of our pain. You know, if someone caused your pain, you know, you don't have to wait for them to change so you can get better. This is why we do inventory. And this is our inventory and not theirs. People want to make it that almost like, you know, where were you to blame? Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking, frightened. Finding the ability to move on might be the most important thing you ever do. You know, we do not have to be in control of another person anymore. That's the beauty thing, the beauty of it. Step 4 is just the beginning of it. You're working on your own, 100% on your own. Step 5 is a different story. And here's another way to look at those 4 columns. Why do I have displeasure? What did that person do, real or imaginary, to produce that feeling of displeasure? What drove me to that feeling of displeasure? And what was the end results of that displeasure? Give me 1 second. Oops. I'm going to do an example of my own. And if anyone wants to stick around afterwards that wants to share, I don't want to put it in recording. And I'm going to try to do a timid one as an example. I'm going to do my dad. I had something happen to me when I was a kid, and I told my dad, and he didn't believe me. And I didn't put it in my inventory right away. My sponsor pointed it out. And then I realized why I resented for so long. But, you know, I have my dad on here, you know, didn't believe me for what had happened. Did it affect my personal relations? I had low self-esteem. My pride was affected, emotional security. And it completely shattered my ambitions. I did not know where our relationship would go after that, selfish and frightened. When I admitted I was selfish in that thought, I went, whoa, the light. See, we go doing this. It's their fault. It's their fault. It's their fault. And then we go, it's us. We're the one holding the resentment. I'm the one holding this can. It's up to me to be able to put it down. But here's the problem. And I said this before. This red one represents a new life. This one represents my old resentments. And I want the new life, but I'm not willing to put down the old resentments. I need to put down what's old so I can take what's new. And that's what things change. That's what 6 and 7 is about. You know, the other resentment I had against my dad was that he was physical with me as a kid. Like he was old school mentality, you know. And I said to my sponsor, as a, you know, he wanted to hear one resentment I had. And he said, that's too vague. And he goes, what's the resentment? Come on, what's the resentment? Not just that he hit you when you're a kid. Oh, I go, oh, it's that one time in the park in front of all the other kids. Did it affect my personal relations? Yeah. Did it give me give me low self-esteem, pride? See, that self-esteem thing, to putting it high or low makes sense, because not many are going to have resentments against their dad like that, where they have high self-esteem. Some might, but it's low because that's the guy we idolize. High, you know, pride got affected in front of everyone else, emotional security, but it shattered the ambitions. And for me, holding on to it was selfish. It wrecked many, many years. I mean, here's the way to look at it. It's not very hard. It's pretty simple. You know, if you look at life like this, when you stub your toe on a rock, do you think for a month about that rock and get revenge and go start smashing, you know, whatever rocks that are in your way? No. When you stub your toe on a rock, you admitted first aid right away. When you get a resentment, 4-9 is a method of first aid. We tend to ourselves, and you have that the rest of your life. Or only this, you got to remember, 4-9 is, it says free, but it's also a training process. So I can learn how to do this. Freedom's the answer. I'm going to read a quote by Dale Carnegie, and it's from a book called How to Stop Worrying and Start Living. And I love this. When we hate our enemies, we give them power over us. Power over our thoughts, power over our appetites, power over our happiness. They would dance for joy if they knew how much they were upsetting us. Our hate doesn't harm them at all, but turns our days and nights into hellish turmoil. No matter how much harm we feel has been done to us and how much we feel anger is justified, our job now is to take our eyes off the microscope and pick up the mirror. We need to be responsible for our actions and our reactions. We have no power over anyone else's actions or emotions, nor do we want them living rent-free in our head. Lord knows we tried long enough to do that do that ourselves without muddling our water, muddying our water, like mud in our water because of other people's behaviors. So what, I mentioned earlier, we can reach a place to be free of anger. I'm going to read a 2,000-year-old quote from Patanjali. That's from the Yoga Sutras. And Patanjali said, if you become steadfast and refining your thoughts of harms directed at others, towards others, all living creatures will cease to feel hostility in your presence. Let me say that one more time. If you become steadfast and refraining your thoughts of harm directed at others, all living creatures will cease to feel hostility in your presence. Translates easy, no more blame. I am not going to assign responsibility to others for where I'm at in my life. And when you have no justified resentments, what you send is love instead of hate. I'm going to give you a perfect example. My son and I, we love going hiking together. He's 10. He's 9. He loves animals, and animals just flock to him. And the other night we go into the pet store and PetSmart, and there they have a section where the cats can get adopted, and they put them behind plexiglass, and they got the little holes where they bleed through. And I go up, I put my hand up there, and the cats are kind of like not wanting to get too close to me, not even sure of me. There's something, energy I'm putting out there. It could be a fear I have, right? But my son puts his little hand up there, and it just flocks up to him. Smells his fingers, and the cat next door, his little hole comes in there, and they're both doing it, and the other cats are meowing. He does not have a thought of harm or hate directed towards any creatures. He's not there yet. And we all were like that as a kid. At one point, we're all like that as a kid. All we have to do is get it down on paper and discuss it with another and let it go, and we can have that. And then we cease to feel fear or hostility or anger in the presence of others. We send love in response to hate, and that's what happens. We may not even know we're doing it. When we have no justified resentments, or any resentment, you get down on paper. Who am I angry at? Why am I angry? How it affected me, and where it took me. Or I like to call how it affects me, what is the nature of your anger? Where am I to blame? There's no better pathway to love, I believe, other than God. When God leads us, there's no pathway to God or love than inventory. No one's ever, I know, and Joe McQueen used to say, no one's got hurt by doing inventory out of the big book. No one. We're going to do we began with meditation. We'll do a meditation at the end. And if you want to stick around afterwards, we'll talk more about inventory. I'll answer questions. And you can give me some of your experiences too as well. So let's just do a quick meditation. And So perhaps some of us are dealing with the resentment right now. Or we got a story to tell about past. But we know resentment's poison to our soul. No peace of mind in holding a grudge. So if you hold on to anything against anyone, the only one that suffers is you. But the moment you start to resent a person, we become a slave. Our thoughts are controlled. Our dreams are destroyed. It influences our decision. It invades our privacy. Very hard to escape that. You cannot go anywhere without it going along with you, which means no happiness. Bitterness is a bottomless pit. We need to stop dwelling on the past. Stop letting resentment control us. Stop letting them drag us down. And stop hanging on to what hurts us. And most important, stop blaming others for your pain. Don't let resentment be synonymous with your name or define you. It's not about closing the book of your past. It's opening it up. And why hang on to what serves no purpose? Think about this. When a t-shirt is torn, like a bad rip in it, do we hold on to it? No, we throw it away without thinking about it. When a chair is broken, when a leg breaks off a chair, it's no longer use. We need to have that same frame of mind with resentments. Locate what created the resentment. We must admit it to another and God, let it go and make amends if that's the case. Let them all go. Let go of what limits you, let go of your pain. It is then, what happens? We discover one of the highest realms of thought. And it's way past resentment. It's called compassion. This is the resentment prayer, as I call it. Resentment inventory prayer. God, help me see myself as I truly am. Open my mind and my heart and reveal to me my resentments so I can be thorough and honest. Help me discover the truth so I can see the causes and conditions that cause my failure. Guide me on this journey to the sunlight of the spirit so I can have a new understanding, a new life. I want to do this right. I need your help today. Amen. I'm going to stop the recording.